more alive. So yeah, I just wanted to have a hangout on the whole like evolution, intelligent design stuff, and I guess in a sense, I would be an idea, but I'm not an idea in the sense that I think intelligent design is like good science or something like that. But yeah, that's pretty much it. But we got bow down and we have unknown. Or do, do you just want people
Well,
to know you by unknown or
it was actually Fibonacci. That's just the name on the Google
yeah,
caption page.
I didn't know if you wanted people to know your name or what Fibonacci here. So yeah, we're just doing this. But I think so. I actually, for the people who are like tuning in or whatever, I just came from Steve's hangout, and we were just talking about why people don't accept evolution, and why creationists say evolution is bad, etc. And for people who know my background and my history and stuff, so if you look on my YouTube channel, when I first started out, I was a hardcore like diehard young Earth creationist, and over some time, it's been only like a couple months. I was open to the idea that my position was wrong, and I changed my position once I saw the evidence. So I don't see any problem with it. Like I say, either way, this stuff hasn't swayed my faith at all. But I see like there are some people who uh, younger creationism. It was life, and once that got taken away in the world, uh, got shaken. I guess they say I'm done with Christianity. I'm done with creationism and everything in the whole. So I mean people deal with you know accepting new facts differently. But I guess like Fibonacci, are you an atheist or agnostic or
Yeah, atheist. I'm getting kind of a feedback here.
agnostic
Is that coming through on
for
your
me?
side? Yeah, I don't know who that's coming through with. I guess it's you. I
I don't hear anything. It might be me though.
don't know why that would be happening. Yeah, atheist.
Hmm. Uh,
Previous Christian actually. So I do have background in Christianity,
Yeah, me too.
specifically young
yeah.
Earth creationism.
Oh yeah.
Also a former young Earth creationist.
Uh,
A bunch of
we're all
converts
extra
here.
earthers.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
actually, I was raised in a Protestant household, so I wasn't a militant young Earth creationist like a lot of people, but I was kind of indoctrinated into the whole young Earth creationism idea. And I mean, as
Yeah.
soon as I started questioning it, it just completely fell apart. So
God did it that way. God did it that way. Just have faith and all that stuff. It's almost similar. We were talking about Pentecostalism, right? And I'm
hmm
not a Pentecostal. I'm a cessationist, and we were talking about that and Steve's hangout, and it's almost the same, right? Where you'll go and you'll question like the Pentecostals about why do for people who don't know Pentecostals are a denomination or a sect in Christianity where they believe that we still have gifts that the Holy Spirit gives to people, like speaking in tongues. That's one of the gifts they believe that the Holy Spirit gives to people as evidence that somebody is a true Christian or not. And so if somebody does not produce the fruit or the evidence of speaking in tongues, then the likelihood of that person being saved is a lot less preferred to somebody who does speak in tongues. Doesn't necessarily mean that you are saved. As far as like I know my church that I was going to, uh, they didn't believe that you were saved because you spoke in tongues, but the likelihood it just showed evidence, you know. But yeah, I don't buy it. And so when I would go and when I asked them about it, and when I would press them for why do you believe this? As far as I know, and maybe they might be listening or whatever right now, but as far as I know, from the answers that I got, they seem to have been saying, that they believe this because it's a feeling, just like somebody else in Steve's hangout said, it's a feeling. I really feel like God is talking to me, whatever. And so, something like that, I don't think people should have a good reason to believe, right? Like if you don't have like good evidence or good reasons, to believe in something, don't believe it.
were you just talking to Steve
Yeah,
in that
I actually
hangout?
there was. Yeah. Well, no, I talked for a little bit, but yes, I was in there.
Yeah, I thought I recognized you.
Yeah, I was in there. But yeah, so in the same sense, like Pentecostalists will say something like that. It seems like the ideas and the younger creationists or just the anti-evolutionists will say something similar, right? Where they'll say, I really don't have like when you press them for it, they might come out scientific, you know, but when you really press them, they'll say something to the fact like, I really believe this because I just really feel in my heart that God wouldn't do this, or there's some underlying issue for why they don't accept evolution rather than a scientific issue if you really press them on it. Like, for example, the guy who actually started the intelligent design movement, Philip Johnson, his whole like niche was that he said he was going to give or he was going to make atheism the face of evolution. And they were going to attack evolution as if evolution is atheistic. That's why whenever I talk to people, they're like, you accept evolution? And I'm like, yeah, I don't see a problem with it. And they're like, but how? Only atheists believe in evolution or accept evolution, not believe, accept. It's a scientific fact. So yeah, it's pretty weird, but I guess like Fibonacci, like when you were coming out of like younger creationism, like what really pressed you that this stuff isn't true?
Well, first of all, let's see if this echo goes away. Yeah, it seems like when you mute your mic, the echo goes away. I don't know. Do you have headphones plugged in right now? Is the stream coming through your speakers?
Yeah, yeah, it's coming through my speakers. I'll go get some headphones if I can find some. Give me a minute. But yeah, you can talk. I'll hear you.
All right. Yeah. Well, that should definitely fix that. So I actually kind of started drifting away from Christianity at a fairly young age, probably around 16, I would say. And it didn't really have anything to do with any evidence-based positions. It was kind of just a conflict in the family situation. And I guess I was naturally predisposed to questioning things because whenever I would question stuff, my family would start freaking out about, you don't question this or you don't question that. But over the time of researching Christianity, I started getting into science and kind of became obsessed with that. So I never really accepted young Earth creationism independently. It was just because my dad and the people around me were pushing it in general. But I don't know, like I always wonder if I even can consider myself a previous young Earth creationist because I don't think I really ever even bought into it. It's just pure indoctrination.
I'm back.
All right.
You still hear it?
Yeah. No, we're good. We're good.
All right.
There we go.
But yeah, that's funny because almost like every person who I've spoken to, not every person, but almost just about every person, that isn't like some type of like troll or like a militant atheist, not just a militant atheist. These people are like militant.
Yeah.
But yeah, they'll say the same thing. Like, they grew up in a Christian home, grew up in the church, and Jesus loving family, all that. And then, they'll just start, questioning like, why do I really believe this stuff? And then they'll ask their families, and their families like, oh, you just gotta go off of faith and blah blah blah. And
Yeah.
and I deal with the same thing, and I'm a Christian, and like nothing is wavering my faith at all, right? Like I 100% believe Jesus rose from the dead, but I guess the difference between me and like everyday going, church loving people, I guess we have different reasons for why we believe what we believe. Like you can ask me why I believe this stuff, and I would say, I just believe it because I think it's true. I think the evidence is strong for it, and that's it. But you're going to act like a church loving, Jesus freak, and you get like a different answer. Like I don't know, like they'll say something like, when I was a little girl, I prayed to God and I heard a voice, and I felt that voice was God or something like that. And the stories always go something like that, right? When I was a little girl, I went to like this. Oh, it's always like that. I thought it was just me, or something like that.
Yep.
And like,
Yep. It's pretty
Now,
it's pretty bad actually.
and so I was actually, this was a few days ago. I was having a hangout on why do people leave the church, right? Or why do people leave Christianity? And one of the biggest things, or one of the biggest reasons I think people leave Christianity is because when they have questions that they want answers to, the church doesn't even try to answer them. Like
Well,
it's
not
not
only
even,
do they not try, but they look down on even questioning to begin with.
right. And so you'll go and you'll ask like a pastor, right? Like, like, how do we know Jesus was real? How do we know God created the heaven and the earth? How do we know Jesus walked the water? How do we know that, this happened or that happened? Or like, what about the translations of the Bible, right? Or what about this? Or what about that? And you just ask the question. And sometimes like these questions are really good. Like we should consider this stuff, right? If we're going to say we're going to believe this, then let's look at the evidence and let's see like where it leads us. But, I don't know, like a lot of these churches nowadays, like I usually say, the church age we're in right now is the age of anti-intellectualism, where you walk into a church and you'll hear a really like feel good sermon, but you won't really have any intellectual content or like any like knowledgeable meat in it. So like church nowadays is made for dumb people. Honest to God, and I'm a Christian saying this, and
Just
I
because
mean,
it's dangerous.
well, yeah, most churches are dangerous, but
Well, the intellectualism is dangerous for the churches.
oh yeah, I guess so. Because then people find out like these pastors are like stealing money from them and stuff. That's why I don't. It's a lot of things that I guess mainstream Christians accept
Mhm.
that like me personally I just don't accept because I just think it's dumb. Like like the Pentecostals think I think that's dumb. Like it's not a real language. Just give that up. I think younger Christianism is dumb. I think I think giving to the church because if you don't give to the church, you're not a real Christian. That's dumb. It's stupid. But like all in all, like you can still be a Christian and just not accept dumb ideas. Like why would you be a Christian and I don't know, think like if you walk up to somebody and say in the name of Jesus be healed, they'll be healed. Like that's dumb. We're not in that church age. It's stupid. Why would you be a Christian and reject modern medicine? That's dumb. Why would you be a Christian and not let your kid get vaccinated? That's stupid. So like you being a Christian has nothing to do with your ignorance and making dumb choices. People may hide behind like their Christianity or like their religion for making dumb choices, but people just make dumb choices because they're dumb. That's it.
I I have discussions with all types of Christians, and I must say you're my favorite type of Christian, partially or mainly because you are the type of reformation in Christianity that we need right now the most. Um, each religion is going through its own reformation. Islam can't even get off the ground, unfortunately. But what we need right now is for Christianity to adopt science. Um, back back when I started, or I guess a lot of atheists go through that militant stage where they're very firebrand atheist. Um, I would go after everybody, even the Christians. I would say, okay, I don't accept young Earth creationism. I do accept evolution. Well, my first thought would be, well, how do you square that with Genesis? How do you square that with the Bible? It doesn't make any sense to me. But I've almost come to the point where I don't even argue with Christians who are scientifically literate anymore because that's defeating the purpose for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, Wayne, I was going to ask you that. How do you reconcile your acceptance of evolution, your acceptance of an old Earth with the Bible? Because that was part of what made me lose my. Sorry.
Oop, his phone is ringing. Let me make sure he's not on the phone before I go into it. I'll wait for him for a minute.
Yeah, I gotta go turn this air conditioner off real quick. It's freezing in here. I'll be right back.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, it's okay, but yeah. So I guess one of the first things people should understand, Christians should understand, is that the Genesis account is an ancient Near Eastern account of God creating the universe from their eyes, and so from their perspective, the account, of course, because it's old, right? Like 2,000 years from now, people who do science today, they'll look at the science we're doing now, and it'll be primitive, and science evolves and it changes. And so when we look at the account, people will say, you don't have to take the literal. I do take it literal, and I'll give you a good reason why. I think the Genesis account was written in such a way where, like, for example, if you brought an ancient Near Eastern person to an airport and you told an ancient Near Eastern person and a 21st century person to both, write down on a piece of paper, what is the object you have in front of you right now? Well, of course, the 21st century American person, they write down, I see an airplane, right? And they probably list down like the type of model it is and the type of engine it is. And you pick up the ancient Near Eastern paper and they're like, this is a metal bird. This is like this is a flying monster or something like that. They would try and like configure, right? Because they wouldn't know, they wouldn't understand. And so what we need to do first, we need to understand like the Genesis account is a human interpretation. The scriptures is a human interpretation, but also when we do science is a human interpretation too. And so what most people would try and do is we would try to the best of our ability to reconcile or reinterpret what the ancient Near Eastern person was saying about that description. Like we would say, oh, you're talking about an airplane. That's not a metal bird, that's an airplane. But we can see why you think that was a metal bird though. And so like, for example, the Genesis account, right? Where it says in, I guess a good one would be, and God, as a matter of fact, I'll pull it up, but it says something about like God making the animals out of the water or something like that. Well, like some people think that God actually literally created the animals out of the water supernaturally, but now we do know like life started in the ocean, and so we can reconcile it and we can reinterpret it, and we can say, oh, okay, I see what they were going for. That's not quite right. This is how it actually happened.
But doesn't that seem like counting the hits and forgetting the misses?
What do you mean?
I kind of had a point to say before that, but let's say if we read the Genesis account from beginning to end, obviously most of it's not going to square up with science. But when we do interpret things to mean certain things, like Muslims do this a lot. I was just talking to a Muslim recently, that's why I'm bringing that up. But they have this thing where they say that the Quran is scientifically literate because it lists creation in the accurate order, but it doesn't, obviously. But there's parts of the Genesis account that are unbelievably absurd, and then there's parts that you might be able to interpret in a way that fits with modern science. But what do you do about all the other parts?
Well, what parts would you? Because I don't see anything that's absurd. But like, what parts would you like? I think I can predict what you might say. Like some people might say, "Oh, the Bible says the sun came before life," or something like that.
Well, the problem is I've talked to the young Earth creationists and the old Earth creationists, so I know the interpretations on both sides, and I know the things like some people will say, well, the account is taken from the surface of the Earth, for example, so the sky was too cloudy for the sun to shine through or something like that. So I don't want to make any assumptions here. I want to know why you believe or how you believe this. So what do you think about the light being created before the stars?
Light being created before the stars?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that's more like what people, I guess, read into it. But I guess when you read the account, it's and it's so like it's not even in my memory. But like I said, I'll try and pull it up. But I know it does say something like, and God said, "Let there be the great lights." But in that particular verse, we're talking about the stars and light and stuff like that. It doesn't say that God created the lights on that day. I know you're talking about on day 4. It says God said, "Let there be the great light." So it could have been God created them sometime in the past. And I'll say, I guess I would have a good reason for believing that, because when you're looking at an ancient Hebraic like text, we use the word made and created interchangeably. And so like, when they say created, they literally mean like created out of nothing. But made, you're taking something that's already created and you're forming it. And so everything in the universe, like all the atoms and everything in the universe was created in Genesis 1:1. And on that, when it's talking about God forming the stars, that could already happen sometime in the past. So
I don't know. It seems pretty obvious to me. What I think about the Genesis account when it comes to light, and I've read it multiple times when talking to people about it. What it seems like to me is the people who wrote this account didn't know what light was, obviously. They didn't, I don't even think they knew that light has to be emitted from a particular source. So I think if you really read the Genesis account, it seems like it's calling light a thing that doesn't have anything to do with stars. It's considering light to be this mythical force that just comes from somewhere. It doesn't ever allude to the idea that light comes from stars or the sun or anything like that, which is why the connections are never made. So I think this reveals an ancient ignorance of light itself.
well, yeah, I guess I mean I wouldn't have a problem like that before. They're ancient people; they wouldn't know about the stuff we had today. So we're just
I do,
trying to,
yeah.
yeah.
I understand that that's your position.
So
I just think that kind of contradicts the idea that the Bible is in some way of divine authorship.
I don't think so. People have some like weird views about how they think the Bible should have came about, or it did come about. Like people think like there was this ancient Eastern person eating breakfast one day, and he just snaps into a trance and he starts writing down some weird words that he didn't even come up with, and then he gets done. And he's like, "Oh my gosh, did I write that?" Like I just think that's dumb. That's not how things happen. I mean, why couldn't it just happen? And also, I'm a theistic naturalist too, so I don't really believe that the supernatural exists. In this space-time continuum, nothing supernatural outside of the laws of physics happen. But how come like this stuff just couldn't have happened providentially, like where it was some type of like, again, like evolutionary process over time, where people write down like their view of how something happened, but it doesn't mean that the event didn't happen. It just means the way they're describing this event is in a sense different from the way we would describe it, because they're ancient people. They wouldn't know. And
So,
what you say?
go ahead.
And so yeah, I think people just hold the Bible up to like a standard that they wouldn't hold any other like ancient like book up to. Like we know like people believed in fairies and all types of stuff. But
Well, we have to, don't we?
why do you say no? We hold the Bible up to the same standard we hold any other book up to. A standard beyond a reasonable doubt.
What I mean by that is the Bible is viewed completely different from any other book. So the way we criticize the Bible is going to be different inevitably because of what the Bible means to people. But I wanted to mention this earlier, but you were talking about how the Genesis account could be the result of like how you were comparing how an ancient person would look at something compared to how somebody today would look at something.
Right.
That reminds me a lot of the apologetic for the tomb account, or accounts plural. It's this. I was actually thinking about this today, but apologetics has become so ridiculous, in my opinion, that even contradictions themselves are proofs of the Bible. You know, like, for example, who was at the tomb, how did the tomb get opened, and all these different things. Well, all the Gospels completely contradict each other on that point. But what the apologists say is this is just further evidence that it actually happened, because all it means is that the differing accounts means that there were actually people there who did witness the accounts. It's pure desperation.
No. In eyewitness accounts, it is expected that when people tell like a testimony, or like you interview somebody about what happened, you're going to get different accounts. But what makes those accounts true is there corroborating evidence with what they say. So like, you know, was there actually a real tomb? Was the tomb rolled away? Was there a guy named Jesus in the tomb? Like, what do we know? But like, other than that, as far as like people like saying like, you know, there's like, as far as like, I guess contradictions, like what would be one? So I guess like, oh, so some guy, he made a hypothesis that maybe when Mary was going to the tomb and she saw the gardener before she went in, maybe the body was there the whole time or something like that. but she just didn't know that the body was in there because she was so busy or something. Oh, she saw the tomb was open and she didn't even bother to look in, but the body was there the whole time or something like that. And that's the
Well,
hypothesis.
how do you miss, like you have a gospel, for example, that doesn't mention this at all. How do you miss an angel coming out of the sky and smiting guards dead in front of the tomb when the other accounts don't even mention that there were ever guards there? How do you make up for such an unbelievable contradiction like that?
I don't call that a contradiction. I just think that somebody picked up something that somebody else like didn't see. Like it's three of us in this room, and so like if we all were talking about something that happened, we would remember the parts. Like what's the word? We would remember the parts that stuck out to us individually. So
I don't see how everybody wouldn't remember an angel coming out of the sky and smiting guards dead, but I mean, teaches his own, I guess.
and also it doesn't say the guards were smited dead, they fainted or whatever, but. Because remember, after they felt like they were dead or whatever, they felt as if they were dead. But after that, they went back to the Jews and they told them what happened. In a sense, they didn't tell them about the angel part, but they just told them that there was no body or whatever. But I don't see, I really don't see a motive for these ancient people to lie, and I don't think they were smart enough to lie about something like this. I just don't. These people were uneducated. They thought that the earth was flat. They thought there was a glass dome in the sky. They were not smart enough to compile a story together like this, where you had Jesus turn the water from the science that we now know is nucleosynthesis, where everything comes from hydrogen. So I mean, these people just they were honestly, the disciples were too dumb to make up something like this. Honest to God.
Wait, what do you mean they were too dumb to make up which part?
Make up all of it. They didn't have the education.
So they were too dumb to make up changing water to wine?
Yes, because now we know from like our modern sciences and stuff that we have today. So the miracles that Jesus did, we can now verify them to see if this stuff is really possible. And we wouldn't expect for the likelihood of these events to be proven with our modern science. Like if like, for example, right, like you know how science works. As time prevails and as time goes on, the likelihood of something false will be confirmed, because as time goes on, as our science and tools get better, right, we'll be able to either prove it wrong or prove it right. That's why we don't believe in the stuff we believed in a couple thousand years ago, right, about our cosmology, because we proved that stuff wrong because our science got better. And so if this account is false, as our science gets better, as our tools get better, we shouldn't be able to verify these things, right? There's no way in the world where we should be able to find out that every atom in the world is made up of everything is made up of hydrogen atoms, or everything started off with hydrogen atoms from the Big Bang. Or how about a guy walking on water? Like people back then, when they thought that was pretty crazy. Now we can get water to levitate with acoustic sound waves. So I mean, the stuff they're mentioning, as time goes on, we're like, okay, it's pretty much more likely this did happen.
Do you think that it's rational to believe an ancient Jew walked on water based on the accounts of unknown authors?
What do you mean?
So here's a good example. I was watching Bart Ehrman debate William Lane Craig on I forget what the main topic was, but Craig is throughout the debate talking about the probabilities of events and all this other stuff, and I like how Ehrman just kind of shut him down and said, we can't know anything based on these accounts that are written down. We can't know for sure that this happened based on these accounts. It's absurd to even think that. And it is absurd to read the Bible and to think that Jesus did walk on water because these people claimed he did.
Well, no, I'm not. Who said? I'm not saying you don't believe anything anybody says unless you have evidence, unless you have corroboration. That's how investigations work. And so what I'm saying is the corroborating evidence that the likelihood of this particular person claiming to be God did walk on water is that now we actually have the science where we have acoustic levitation. We can get water to levitate. We can get somebody to walk on water.
So we can actually somebody can actually walk on water now.
Well, hold on a minute. I wanted to
Go ahead. Yeah.
point something out. You're saying, but what's the catalyst for Jesus walking on water? You're saying that, yeah, and I've seen experiments where acoustics can make water levitate, but it's not, how can I put this? It's not levitation. It's acted upon by an outside force. So, if I
I don't even see how that's comparable to this, to be honest. But
Well, no. Well, I
no,
guess I guess it depends on, because like, all right, so like what would you guys consider to be like a miracle?
something that breaks the natural laws of physics.
Yeah.
I don't believe it. I definitely don't. I'm a theistic naturalist. In Jeremiah 33, it says that God will uphold the laws of physics until the end of time. And so what I would expect, if God did do a miracle in the distant past with these ancient people, if it really is a miracle from God, he wouldn't need the tools, like he wouldn't need the scientific tools so he could do it. But nonetheless, we should be able to recreate this event once our science gets better. And so that's how we can verify whether this stuff happened or not. I mean, if the natural law is being broken all the time and God just going in and doing stuff, we can't verify if it's true or not.
So that's interesting. So these people around 2,000 years ago were able to, or this one person was able to walk on water, yet up till now, with all the technology we have, we can't even slightly attempt to walk on water. I think that's the gap you're jumping there is pretty astounding.
Well, no, the likelihood, right? Okay, now we can verify that, hey, we can get water to levitate and etc. The likelihood of this account has gone up because now we can recreate this event. Now, even though like God or Jesus or whatever, he didn't need the tools to do these things. If this is really God, he can do whatever he wants with the natural law. But he what's the word? He upholds them. He doesn't break them, right? And so what you would expect, like this is the prediction that I'm making, but what you would expect if God doesn't break the natural law, if God does a miraculous event and we record it, right, and God is working within the laws of physics, okay, we should be able to recreate this stuff. We should be able to do it again to see if it's true. But if God is breaking the laws of physics and stuff like that, we'll never know. Bart Ehrman is right if God broke the laws of physics. But if he didn't, well, then as our science gets better, and at one point in time, we should be able to recreate this stuff again. We should do it.
So when you read the Bible, you don't see anything that you consider to be breaking the laws of physics.
No, I don't believe the laws of physics can be broken. That's ridiculous to me.
So you think everything in the Bible as it stands fits perfectly with what we know as the law of physics, the laws of physics?
Yeah. And it, well, okay, so the best example I could give you, right, is an example from C.S. Lewis where he says, if I put some change or some money in a drawer and I wake up one day and my money has miraculously disappeared, I wouldn't conclude that somebody broke the mathematical laws, right? I would conclude that there was an outside force, an invader who stole my money. And so when we look at these events, right, these miraculous events happen in the Bible or any book, we should say, okay, the laws of physics weren't broken. There was just an outside intruder. There was somebody manipulating his laws.
If you want to look at it that way.
I disagree. I highly disagree with all.
Richard, are you a Bible literalist?
Yes, I am.
You are, okay.
Now, according to the scriptures, Jesus said to his disciples, because they were amazed of all these witnesses of miracles. Now, they seen him do this in real time. So they wanted to know that how can you do these things? So Jesus told them, these things come by fasting and praying. Now, when he told them that, he was in the process of doing a miracle. Now, me for one, I can honestly say I've seen these things happen with my own eyes. Not only have I seen these things happen, but I myself, with the faith that God has blessed me to have in Christ Jesus and his miracles, and by God's power being invested in him to do these miracles, I myself, according to the word of God, applied it to my life and was able to do these things. Jesus says something very profound. He says, this is how you know that these are my disciples. What does disciple mean? One who is disciplined. So if you are disciplined in the faith, you will be able to do these things, and you don't need no science. You don't need nobody to backbite you. You don't need nobody to hype you up. You'll be able to accomplish these things. But it is only given from God that you will be able to accomplish these things. So, a young lady in my church, one of the churches I went to, needed her back problem healed. For some reason, she came to me. Now, before I tell you this miracle and how it happened, I first want to tell you that God also, through the scriptures, proves that he can show us signs and wonders, not only in the natural life, but he can do it in the dream world. So I received a dream that I believe it was from God, saying that I will be able to do these miracles. So I put it to a test. So I went to church, and she asked me to, she told me that she's been having problems with her back. So she wanted me to pray for her. Being willing to do it, I prayed for her, and I made sure I followed the scriptures. I prayed for her, and she herself posted on Facebook, I was healed by the power of God who worked through Mr. Daniels. Now, how I know she was healed is because of doctor proof, doctor report proof. This woman had a history with her back problems. She no longer has it. That is how you prove that miracles that Jesus did are true, as well as that you yourself can do these miracles only if God permits you to be able to do it, if you are faithful to the faith.
Did she have a diagnosis?
Yes, she did. I
What
just
was her
said
diagnosis?
history. She
Yeah,
had
I know. What was she diagnosed with?
I can't remember that report, but I do have her number. If you would like to go to her house with me, I can accomplish that with no problem. But she showed me that she has history with this. So when she told me that she went back to the doctors and she told them that she had not felt any more pain in the same areas that she's been healed in, that she has received her healing, and she told the doctors, I believe, the same report that I'm telling you, the doctors was astonished. It was like, wow, I guess your faith is very strong. They couldn't
So this,
explain it. They couldn't explain what happened, but she knew that it came from the source of God Almighty.
do you believe it could have been anything else possibly, or does it have to have been?
Anything possibly, anything else, if she has not taken no medicine. You know, when
Do
they
you
take,
do you know what remission is?
when they give you, when you tell somebody or a doctor a report like this, you know they take you through tests to see if you take medicine or whatever the case may be, and if you're lying. So they take these tests. I'm pretty sure they took these tests with her. I wasn't there, so I can't really say for sure whether they did or not. All I can say is that she showed me the paperwork. Okay,
Okay,
so this
how many other
proves,
people have you prayed for? Or
prime example, I'm gonna give you a second example about myself. I was coming from work one day. I'm coming from work one day. And I had a headache, a migraine headache. Now, at that time, I wasn't stressing about nothing. I wasn't overthinking anything. Nothing medically was wrong with me. But for some reason, this headache was just killing me the whole day. So I'm on my way home, and I remember the scriptures where it says where Jesus tells his disciples that what the miracles you see me do, you can do also. These things come by fasting and praying. So I often fast and I always pray. So I put it to the test. I said, okay, I'm going to believe on God's word and I'm going to put this to the test. And I prayed. I began praying to the Lord on the train on my way home. So the migraine, as I was praying, it seems like it was getting worse. So I kept praying and I put my hand on my head where it was hurting. And I said, in the name of Jesus Christ, pain be gone. In the name of Jesus Christ, pain be gone. And before I got to my stop, to the destination that where I was going at, the pain was gone. Okay, so that's two accounts proving that I test his word and find that I found it to be true. Okay, you can put me on a lie detector test, you can put me on whatever test you got to hook me up again, and it will come out. This man is telling the truth. So there is a way to find out. You just gotta apply the word to your life, follow it wholeheartedly, and find out the truth.
Well, we could talk about anecdotes all day, so I'm gonna agree with Wayne. We need to go back on topic.
So yeah, well, but yeah, so yeah, it's, and actually this view, so the view I take on scripture where God doesn't break the laws of nature. He works with his creation. He works with his natural. He works with the natural law over time. This is what actually helped me accept evolution, but you know, like I told you before, I didn't accept evolution, and so I was looking at it from a scientific point and a scientific view, and I really couldn't see from like a theological standpoint how I could reconcile evolution with my Christian faith. And on a theological standpoint, I guess when you look at miracles and you know what people will call the supernatural from that point of view, I have no problem with God using evolution, especially like when you take into account like all right, the creation days, they couldn't have been like 6 literal days because that interpretation came from a dream from Ellen G. White, and it was wrong. People prior to like the 1800s, they always said like Augustine, St. Basil, etc. They said that the days of creation were long days. And so like when you look at it like that, like of course, like all right, God worked through this long process over a long time through natural law, so he could create or diversify life, should I say? Because evolution isn't a creative process. But I don't see a problem with it. And I also think too, for somebody to like you know walk away from the faith, right? Because they can't reconcile like Genesis with evolution. I think it's kind of silly because Christianity isn't like based on the Genesis account. Christianity is rooted in the resurrection of Christ. And so like, you know, you could believe in gap theory or like, you know, ancient aliens came and seated us by God or whatever. I think it's stupid. But if you accept, you know, that Jesus Christ rose from the dead, then I don't see a problem, you know.
Well, hold on a minute, Wayne. You said that you don't see how somebody could lose their faith by you know because they could reconcile evolution and Bible.
Right.
You know that was part of what made me lose my faith. It was part of it, but it wasn't all of it.
It wasn't all of it, right? But for somebody to say like I completely lost my faith because
hold on, I wasn't done. Hold on.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the thing was, you know, I was taught to take, and I should say that I was not brought up in a religious household. I was saved at 14, and you know, sorry, but I couldn't. I kind of threw me off my train of thought. But you know, the whole Genesis thing. What else could be wrong in the Bible? So that's kind of part of it. What you know. But I should also say that I'm not an atheist. I am an agnostic. So I still don't. I still don't know.
I'd actually like to talk to you on that point. Real quick, I lost connection, so I had left the chat because of that. I guess it would be too off topic, but I would like to talk to Bao before whatever your name is about agnosticism and atheism.
But
So you say you're not an atheist. Do you think agnosticism is a third position?
well, there are people who proclaim the truth that yes, they know for sure that God exists. They know for sure God does not exist. So yeah, I would say it's the middle of the road, a third position. Yeah.
So the way I look at it is atheism and theism, and you can group theism, deism together. It doesn't really matter, but atheism and theism answer the belief question, while agnosticism answers a knowledge question. So you can only be atheist or theist. Because when I ask you, do you believe in a God or not, you have to answer yes or no. But do you know if there's a God? Yeah, you can have a middle ground there. You can be ignorant about that.
I see where you're going. Okay, yeah, I see.
So do you believe in the existence of a God?
No, I know I don't believe I do not believe in the existence. I can't talk. You know what I'm trying to say.
You would be an atheist then.
Okay.
It is you can be an agnostic atheist and an agnostic theist, because you can not believe in a God but also not know whether a God exists. But it's not a dichotomy. You're either atheist or theist.
Oh, okay. I see.
Just wanted to throw that out there. I deal with that a lot.
Yeah, I was kind of. I mean, I get what you're saying, and I agree.
All right. Well, I'll throw it back to you, Wayne. Take us back on topic, since I keep getting us off topic.
That was interesting, so I can see, right? I can see how somebody who was like anti-science, right? Like some people don't accept climate change. Even when I was a younger Christian, so I did accept like climate change, but like I could see how once you find out, right, that your position or your worldview isn't like scientifically adequate, you could say, oh well, what else is wrong with my worldview, whatever, right? But I don't know, like for me, like the whole like evolution creation thing, that just it wasn't enough to like make me say, oh my gosh, like maybe God doesn't exist. Like the science never made me question God's existence. It made me question how God did it, but not if God did exist, because it was never a question in my mind whether God existed or not.
I think that is a big distinction to be made, because there's microphone. There are pretty much two types of people when it comes to deconverting from religion. It's people who their faith is shaken so badly by what they discover that they immediately disconnect from the source of their religion in general, which is God. But then there's the people who find religion and God separate. And if their religion is falsified, then it doesn't necessarily falsify their God. And those type of people, I think you can't really get through to. And that's a subjective claim, getting through to them is getting through your opinion. But if you believe religion and God are separate in some way, then you're probably still going to be a believer, or even you'll be a deist, even if you find out your religion has been falsified.
Well, I don't see religion and science as a separate thing. I mean, you can do science apart from Christianity, but
I agree.
Yeah, but as far as Christianity goes, like as far as like the Genesis account and like how you understand God, I think it would be very wise to incorporate what you know scientifically to the Bible. I like what St. Augustine. I like the way he put it, where God has given us the 66th book of the Bible, but He's also given us the 67th book of nature, and so that's why like I corroborate a lot in like nature into my theology. That's why I don't like think that God breaks the laws of physics. We don't like, what is that? What is breaking the laws of physics? Like we wouldn't even know that. It really doesn't exist. We can test to see if the laws of physics have been consistent since the Big Bang. We've done that. As far as we know, they've been consistent. We don't have a reason to believe that they have changed or anything. I think it's pretty wise to use the natural world as a guide to guide you to what is true. Truth is whatever conforms with reality. So if you're believing in something, right, that isn't cooperating with reality, then you need to change what you believe is true.
But the thing is, I can understand a belief coming from, let's say somebody makes the argument, well, there's lots of archaeological proof that these events happened, but for me, and from what I've seen and from what I've read, there's no um, evidence of the supernatural. I mean, a human being risen from the dead is supernatural. A human being, well, yeah, a human being turning water into wine. I mean, that's, you can't turn a lump of iron into gold. That's, I think it's alchemy. You're getting into alchemy there, and feeding the 5,000 with a loaf of bread and one fish. I mean, just the supernatural. That part of it is also part of the problem I have. Am I articulating that right?
I really don't know, because me myself, I don't believe in the supernatural. So when somebody says like something is supernatural, I kind of just like roll my eyes a little bit. Just I don't see like, and like, so I know like I have like an agnostic atheist in here, and I guess like Fibonacci, are you an agnostic atheist too? Or?
Well, I'm an atheist, as in I don't believe in the existence of a deity, but I also don't claim to know whether or not one exists. It's possible that one does exist.
I had two non-believers in here, and we all would agree like the supernatural just it inside of this dimension, like we have no evidence for it, so we have no reason to believe that like natural law can be broken. But as far as that, like I guess like instead of just saying like these things couldn't happen and being dismissive, right? I think we need to find out like, all right, well, as far as Christians go, if somebody's a Christian, I think the best thing a Christian could do instead of just saying, well, God just did it and that's the way it is, God can do what he wants. I think the beautiful thing, and having my point of view, is knowing that God works with natural laws, and so we can someday find out how this is done if we work at it. If our science gets better and our tools get better and our knowledge gets there, we should be able to recreate these events. This should motivate us to like do better in science.
There's a point I wanted to throw in real quick. I think Richard wants to say something, but this will be quick. But the idea of the supernatural is kind of absurd if you really think about it, because when we understand something that we consider supernatural, or when we find something that we consider supernatural, it automatically becomes part of the natural world because it becomes understandable. And if it's understandable, there has to be some type of method in which we can understand it.
I agree with it to a certain extent. Now, you talk about if a miracle happens, there should be a way to go about a process of this miracle happening again that is learnable. Basically, that's what you're saying. So, and like I said, I proved that already. When you go according to the scriptures and follow, this is the whole reason why Christians are called Christians. They're in front of the word Christian. I mean, in the word Christian, you have Christ. So you're supposed to follow Christ. So this is the whole reason why I believe a lot of false Christians stumble and lose their belief because they're not believing the right way. There's a right way to do things and there's a wrong way. Now, I believe that I've been reading my Bible since I was about 9, when I actually started understanding things slowly about the Bible and what I was reading. So, and I've come to the knowledge that okay, I was doing this all wrong before I actually followed Christ. Like literally sat down and said, you know what? Okay, in Matthews, he went and got baptized. Okay, now I'm gonna go get baptized. Okay, and then it says he started performing miracles in between the 5th chapter and the 10th chapter of Matthews. Okay, um, how did he go about doing those things? So I went into the Bible and dissect the Bible as far as scriptures, from scripture to scripture, and heard him say, these things come by fasting and praying. So I said, okay, I know how to fast. I know about that. Let me start doing that. And let me start doing it more. So I agree with you. There's a process you have to go through to prove that statement of miracles, actually being true. Um, I think the problem is a lot of people don't go through the process correctly. It's just like, if I tell you to bake a cake and I tell you, listen, you got to put this ingredient in, that ingredient, that. And you say, okay, instead of, I got on my manuscript, put butter in it and you put margarine. Or you put something close to butter, but it's not actually butter. You try to go your way about it, you're going to get it wrong. So your cake won't taste the same as mine. If you follow the manuscript or directions on how to bake the cake, then it's going to be the same. So yeah, you're right. There is a process you have to follow to find that out, and you can find that out by following that process. And I'm a witness. I've done it. And that's why I have the results that Jesus had. Now, I never tested me walking on the water, which I believe that if God would allow me to do that and give me that power to do that, then yeah, I can do that. But it has to be a purpose to do it. All things that Jesus did was for a purpose. It wasn't just to show off his powers. That's where a lot of people get it wrong at. He didn't, twist, the fact of gravity, or he didn't, break the laws of physics for no reason to prove that he's God. No, he did it for holy purpose and a reason to reach and make believers of people. So when you're doing it, when you're trying to go through this process, you got to realize you're not just doing it to find out if God is real. No, you're doing it to find out if not only if God is real, but is it possible to do these things in the now time in order to believe that it ever happened at all. So when you follow the manuscript of what the Bible is saying, and you really do your research and breaking down the scriptures to understand it, so you can follow it, then you will reap the benefits of actually doing what Jesus did, doing miracles and amazing people to the point where they will believe. The Bible says, do these works before men that they may worship the Father in heaven. So it's a format you have to follow in order to see these things happen. That's the only way we're actually going to make more believers, and that's the only way that you will ever see the evidence. You can't see the evidence if you don't believe wholeheartedly, or you don't practice the manuscript. You will never see the evidence. So then you will stay an unbeliever.
See, Rich, you're asking me. I mean, you're not asking me, but you're saying that I have to suspend my disbelief in order to repeat this, in order to falsify this. I think that's, personally, I can't do that. Well, how can I put this? In my black and white mind, I can't, I don't have the ability to suspend my disbelief before I believe or accept something.
Well, I believe you can. I think you're struggling with not actually seeing things happen in the reality. A lot of times we have a lot of Christians turn away from the faith because they fail to believe what has happened or what has actually happened. A lot of times when Christ did a miracle, there was a lot of people who just said, oh, he just got people acting their things out. No, these people had real issues. You know, like the one prime example, the man with palsies. You know, he came into the temple with his hand all messed up. You know, out of form. And then it is not until Jesus acknowledged it and prayed for him and watched it crack back into form, and he was able to use his hands normally. So is when he did those miracles that he made many believers. The Bible says his fame grew throughout Jerusalem. So I think it's a matter of you actually experiencing it. I think the reason why your disbelief is so strong is because you have not experienced it. See, mine is so strong in my belief because I've experienced it. I've not only seen it done through other people, but I've seen it done through me. So I've experienced it on both sides. So that's why my faith is strong, and no one can turn me from believing what I believe. And that's why your disbelief is strong, because no one can turn you from that until they prove it.
So you understand my skepticism. So
Yes, I do. Because if I tell you the truth, I used to be that way. There was a point I didn't never deny my faith, but I always had questions and doubts because I've never witnessed nothing, and I've always seen bad, false, religious people, and I was like, okay, there's got to be more. You know, either I'm looking at them the wrong way, or I'm not doing it the right way. So, like I said, I've got in touch with my faith and deep in my faith at the age of 25. So from 25 to 30, that's 5 years. I'm 6 years now. I'm actually 31. So that's 6 years that I'll not only follow the faith through scriptures word for word, but I put it to practice as my faith build up. And when I see things happen, it encouraged me to keep going. So when I see someone get healed in front of me, and then they go to the doctors and say, yo, here, I got 2 papers here that says I had cancer. And now this one says I don't have cancer. You know, and they come to me and say, oh, the doctors were astonished because as you see in the paperwork, there are 2 papers proving that I had cancer, and there are another paper that proves that I don't have it. There are x-ray pictures that prove that I have it, and then are x-ray pictures that prove I do not have it. So when I've seen that, it made me even more eager to find out how can I be able to do that and experience that in my life as God works through me. So I've started practicing my faith even more, and that's what I think that you need as a unbeliever. You need proof. A lot of unbelievers need proof. I mean, there are some unbelievers that whether you give them proof or not, their mind is made up that they still want to go the way they're going. And, you know, that's okay. It's your decision. But when you get proof, I don't see how you can deny it. I mean, like I said, I've seen it happen. I've done it myself. So I think it's a matter of you actually seeing it happen through whether it's somebody you know or whether, you know, you see it actually happen in the same room as you, whether you know the person or not, see them get healed. I think that will help your belief.
Richard, so I've talked to quite a few people who have faith healing testimonies. Let's say a Muslim prays to Allah to heal a family member, and that family member heals. What do you think about that? Is it? I mean, are you guys praying to the same God, or?
Well, a lot of Muslims say that they believe that we are praying to the same God. I actually have a sister that says that we do pray to the same God, and she says we just call him Allah. You guys call him God. So I said, okay, if that's true, then why deny his son? I mean, do you guys deny Adam, who God also made and created? They said,
yeah, it's
no.
clearly not the same God. Clearly not the same God.
Well, I actually agree with you. I don't think it's the same God simply because you know, when I follow my God as it relates to following the Jesus Christ teachings and the Father, because we got to understand that Jesus Christ came to be an example, and the Father was his God. So when you follow that manuscript and you get the results that like I said, I've seen done and I actually did myself, then yeah, it's not the same God. Now, when it comes to um, comparison, I can't really compare because, like I said, I've never seen miracles done in the Muslim world, so I can't compare that. But I do have a sister that trusts that comes to me and trusts me to pray for her with her sickness. She has a blood issue, so she trusts me to come to her, which is really not, she shouldn't be doing that, but she does do that secretly. She asks me to pray for her. Now, I haven't seen her healed yet because I think it's because her belief is not strong enough for the healing to work. You have to understand that when you're healing someone, Jesus even told his disciples that when you get healed, he says your faith has healed you. Go and sin no more. So my faith has to apply with your faith, and then if it agrees with God, the Father, he'll allow the healing virtue to take place. Now, I think that's the reason why she has not been healed yet. So, like I said, go back before with I never seen a Muslim healed or pray for healing and they receive the healing. So I don't know how true that account is. Like I said, I would have to witness it in order to believe that. But you said you have witnessed it, and you still don't believe in God.
Well, I said I witnessed it. No, I didn't witness it.
No, you said you witnessed. You had somebody. Well, you said you had somebody tell you that they
Well,
was
yeah,
healed.
I've talked to hundreds of maybe thousands of people of all different religions, and I've had the same claims from every religion. I hear testimonies exactly like yours from Hindus, Buddhists, even Buddhists. I mean, how does an outsider like me determine which one of you is telling the truth or which one of you have the correct religion if you're saying that your faith healing testimony is founded upon Christianity when a Hindu is saying the same thing? So to me, your testimony isn't you say it's based on proof, but it's clearly not. It would be based on it's an anecdote. If you really wanted to prove what you're saying, we would put it through the scientific method. We would do peer-reviewed science on it and see if it produces some type of results. But as far as your testimony is going right now, we're not going to go anywhere with it because it's just that, a testimony. Until
Right.
we get some actual results out of it,
I
it's not
agree.
going to go anywhere.
I was looking for in myself. It wouldn't come to my head, but that's the right word. You're looking for results. So let's say you have an aunt or uncle that's been sick for years, and to help your unbelief, not force you to believe, but to help it. Let's say you say, "Look, Rich, how about you come to my aunt's or uncle's house and prove to me that your God is real by, healing them."
See,
How,
that's what I was talking about. I would be open to that.
so you only know their medical condition. You know if it's true or not, if they're sick and they're not faking it. So let's say I come over there and I actually perform this with the help of God, with His power working through me, perform this miracle. Do you think that? My question to you is: do you think that would help your unbelief? That you will realize, okay, now I believe that your God is real, and I want to learn of this God, because there are many applications in the Bible where this same situation has happened, and a person was made to believe in God.
Okay, so I'm open to your claims. I do believe I side with a lot of atheists on this idea, but when religious people claim that they've had these personal experiences with Jesus or with faith, faith healing in general, I believe you experienced something. I'm not dismissing your personal experience. I don't think you would necessarily lie to me about this just to justify your position. So I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt. But if you did invite me over to witness some type of faith healing, yeah, I would go. I would see if I witness it and if any type of results come out of it. And if you could give me some verifiable evidence that is, retestable, reproducible, um, and if I could
Okay.
in some way figure out that I'm not being fooled by some type of magic trick or something like that, because Chris Angel or David Blaine can pretty much do any of this type of stuff and fool people into believing it.
Mhm.
If I found out that I wasn't being deceived, then yeah, that would give credence to your claim, but it wouldn't prove your God is real. We would have to go further for that.
Okay. That would be a start though. So let's say you find out someone in your family member that you would like for me to come over to, prove to you that my God is real, as it relates to helping your unbelief, and it actually happens. Let's say for a period of time. Let's say for 3 people in your family, and it actually happens for all 3 of them, and you watched it happen. Would you say that will help your unbelief?
Do you mean it would help my potential belief or my unbelief? What do you mean?
I mean your potential belief to believe in the God that I serve is truly real and it's the
Well, I
truth.
would I would assume that there's something more to it, but I wouldn't immediately buy into it.
Okay, okay, but I can see you do have some type of um, willing willingness, if you may.
Yeah, I'm
To,
not I'm not dismissing your claims just to dismiss them. I want my goal in my life is to believe as many true things and as little false things or as few false things as possible. So whatever it takes to get to that point, yeah, I'm open.
oh, okay, okay. So Wayne, I want us to stay close with him so we can, you know, and can help him, um, um, you know, help him believe.
Sure. I
Do
guess
you have his
what you say? You were cutting out.
Do you have his information?
Yeah, everything is through Google Hangouts, yeah.
Okay.
I'll get into some more hangouts with you guys later.
All right, brother.
But yeah, Fibonacci, you had a question for me too.
Yeah, so this is on topic, but this is something I actually wanted to bring up earlier. But squaring evolution with the Bible is a big thing for you, I can tell. But so there's this big thing in the first Genesis account that a lot of apologists seem to have think they figured out, but the uh, the contradiction between when animals and men were they created before or after men? Now, whether or not you feel like you have an answer for that, it's kind of besides the point. So in Genesis 2, it says, "It's not good that a man should be alone. I will make him a helper as his partner." So out of the ground, the Lord God formed every animal of the field and every bird of the air. So it's basically saying that the animals and everything were made specifically for men. So of course, in evolution, we know that men didn't come, Homo sapiens didn't come before every other species on this planet. So how do you square that one away?
It's assuming that Adam was the first human, which he wasn't the first human. If you look in Genesis 1, there was a creation event of man and woman, and it doesn't even give them a name, it just said man and woman in Genesis 1. Then you have Adam being created specifically in Genesis 2. But in the Hebrew, Adam means human. And so you have the human made in Genesis 1, and then you have Adam, a human, being made in Genesis 2. And so it's a narrowing down from the beginning of the universe. You had a cosmos and everything like that, and it's narrowing down like somebody zooming in with a camera. It's narrowing down to the main character of the narration. So yeah, that question assumes that man was first, but no, he wasn't. Adam wasn't the first human. He might have been the first human to have like some type of relationship with God. Adam and Eve being the progenitor of the human race. I don't believe that to be true. Hey Matt.
That covers that.
Hey Matt, what's up?
I'm good. You're still
Yeah.
talking. You're still preaching your lies.
What lies?
Yeah, like Adam and Eve. There, I just heard you talk about Adam and Eve, not real people yet.
No. I never said it. I hold to the position Adam and Eve were real people. They were not the first, though.
Okay, so there was human beings before Adam and Eve,
Oh yeah,
Oh, here we go.
Even though the Bible says no.
the Bible says there were, and I can actually
Where
like show
does
this.
the Bible say there was other human beings? Who was the first man according to the Bible in Genesis,
There was
and according
there
to
was
Jesus?
there was no first human.
Well,
There
what
there
did
was no-
Jesus say then? Because Jesus said something like this in the New Testament. That's the scriptures of the Christian church. You know that, yeah? So he said that as death came through one man. So where did death come through again?
No, that's not talking about physical death. We're talking about spiritual death.
Oh, really? Really? Talking about yeah. So spiritual death. So these other humans weren't in a relationship with God.
No,
So how did they come to be in a relationship with God?
through God's people telling them about God.
But they weren't any God's people. So if you've got all these other human beings, let's say you've got a whole population of human beings, and none of them are godly, they don't have knowledge of God, they're not doing that kind of stuff, they're not in a spiritual relationship with God. How did the first one evolve into having a relationship with God?
Because
What process of evolution did that happen through?
Evolution doesn't tackle that. That's a spiritual issue. Evolution only deals with biology, physiology.
No, it doesn't. Actually, not. It doesn't. Evolution is part of science, and science operates on assumptions. Those assumptions are philosophical in nature, and you have to be aware of that. As soon as if you're ever going to look at science, you have to be aware about its foundations, so you can differentiate when it's talking science and when it's talking philosophy.
Okay. Well, evolution is a fact.
Yeah, it is. Well, what do you mean by evolution?
Okay. Evolution is a fact. Adam and Eve were not the first two people in the world. I mean, I can even prove that without a Bible. The human race did not descend from two people. They descended from a population. But that idea is not it's not foundational in Christianity. It's an idea that came from St. Augustine, who thought that when humans sinned, it brought about physical death. He was wrong about that. It was a human interpretation, and it's okay. It's all right.
You never answered my question. How did the first human beings get into a relationship with God? Because if you've just got a population of humans, you've got that population there. What would bring about one of them entering into a relationship with God?
Well, if you saw one of my last videos I made, deducing the
I don't watch your videos.
Oh, well, you should. You will learn something.
No,
But
definitely not.
if you watch my last one, I talked about how if a God did exist and he was all powerful and all knowing, the only way you would know if that specific God existed is if he revealed himself to you. And so God had to reveal himself to the first spiritual humans, Adam and Eve.
Okay. So tell me this. What would be wrong with this idea then? How would this be contradicted by science, for example? Let's say you've got a population, and that population is the closest you could ever get to human beings. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Then God ensouls one of these closest you could ever get to human beings creatures. So he gives them a soul, and that makes them a human. Where's that contradicted in evolution?
Well, it's not contradictory. It's not contradictory. Evolution has no like bearing on spirituality or souls. Evolution is just a scientific theory to explain how organisms diversify. I mean, that's it.
But if there's nothing in science against that, that would give you the first man, Adam.
No.
The first man, Adam, would be the first closest to humans you could possibly get.
But
that was ensouled. So if God ensouls one creature, and that creature becomes the first human being, why not?
Because people did not derive one by one. We evolved in populations, and so God wouldn't just give one human a soul.
Why not?
Because
what would prevent God from doing that?
Because if God is going to make this population of people humans and only do it with one person, that is not.
They're not humans. They're the closest you could possibly get to humans.
Well, actually, we're not necessarily what you would call humans. We're primates.
So but that's another subject. That's another subject. So let's say let's say you've got the closest relative to human beings that could ever be thought of, and then from that population, you've got a population of these closest relatives to human beings, and then God ensouls one of them, just one, Adam. Would that be consistent with the Bible?
Sure, let's go with that. But I
is
still.
It contradicted by science?
Is it contradicted by science? I would say no. Science doesn't touch on those things.
There we go. So there's where you have a first human being, Adam, not contradicted by science, and not contradicting the Bible.
Okay. Cool. That's, I mean, I think Matt is done having his temper tantrum, but
that came out of nowhere.
Okay.
From the discussion that happened when I was in the room, when he was talking about Adam and Eve not being that he doesn't believe in that, but now he's saying, here's a scenario that's possible from anyone who believes in God. God can do that. God could ensoul one of these creatures. If he did that to one human being, that's consistent with the biblical account, and it's not contradicted by science. So why wouldn't a Christian take that view?
Because if you're being intellectually honest, right, even from looking at the natural world alone, the human population did not derive from two people. And even if you want to make that argument, you can't, because
Where's the evidence that it didn't?
Mitochondrial DNA, it goes back way farther than just two people. It derives from a population of people. And also, if you want to make the claim that we have evidence that we all came from two people, the farthest back you could take us back is to maybe 4,000 years ago to the Noahican flood. So you can only say that
the what?
The Noah flood, the Noah flood, where
you believe in a flood. Where's the scientific evidence for that?
Well, I don't believe in your type of flood. If you believe in global flood, there was no global
where's
flood.
The scientific evidence for any kind of flood like that happening in that area, in that region?
I mean, we could go down that road.
But yeah, that's why I'm walking down it. Where's the scientific evidence for that?
Well, can I get some clarity on what type of Christian Matt is?
Matt is all over the place.
I'm a biblical
no Christian. Going on right
Otherwise, I don't deny. I uphold the truth of the truth of the Bible. I don't allow science to dictate to me my theology. My theology is consistent with science, never contradicted by science. But I don't take the Bible denying kind of view of science that Wayne does.
So you're a theistic evolutionist?
Yes, I am, but I'm not your kind of theistic evolutionist.
That was surprising.
So you think there were like two people who progenerated the human race?
I'm sympathetic to that view unless it's contradicted by science, and I don't mean Adam. God ensouls Adam, and then God takes a rib, a literal rib from Adam, and creates a woman, Eve. And I'm not talking about a time span of a couple of years. So you can have Eve, the first woman, and Adam, the first man, and both being ensouled by God, who somewhere along the evolutionary chain come together. There we go, something like that. So what I'm demonstrating to you is that the the response of the Christian to science ought to be, okay, under what scenario can I be most faithful to the scriptures and most faithful to science? And when I say science, I don't mean the philosophy of science, which is what you buy into. I mean the science, that which can be supported with scientific evidence, not philosophy, not assumptions, but actual evidence. And that's why I'm not your kind of theistic evolutionist.
I still really.
Because if you embrace biological evolution, as put forward in the scientific literature and the scientific community, then you have to believe something like this. You have to believe that it was not necessary for human beings to appear on this planet. But according to the Bible, human beings being on this planet was the sole purpose. That was the crowning creation of God. So on the biblical view, it's necessary that humans be here, but on biological evolution, it's not necessary that we're here. So there's a conflict there. How do you resolve that conflict?
Because that is a false dichotomy. That is not what the science says. The science says that it's highly unlikely for people to be here.
It doesn't. It doesn't say that.
Oh, it does. It does.
Actually, it absolutely doesn't. What science says is this. This is what biological evolution says, and says repeatedly throughout the literature, never contradicted by anything in the literature, that if you rewind the evolutionary clock back to when life first began to evolve, if the environment had been slightly different, if something different had been selected for, if a different mutation had happened, then we might not be here.
And the likelihood of the first prokaryote...
Is that what science says?
Well, no. The likelihood of the first prokaryote cells coming together and forming the first life was highly improbable.
I'm not talking about abiogenesis. I'm talking about when life started to evolve. Let's say we had a slightly different environment, okay? So life starts to evolve, and there's something slightly different in the environment. There's an environmental change that takes place. Would humans necessarily be here? Because that would, if the environment's different, then what's selected for is different. Yes.
The science doesn't say it wasn't necessary. That's a theological implication you're putting to the science.
Science says what I just said.
No.
You say that. No, science. You show me anywhere in the scientific literature where it says that human beings or any species, not just human beings, that it's necessary, but through the process of evolution, it is necessary for a species to come about. You will not find it because they believe because they hold to natural selection, and natural selection is an unguided, undirected, unintelligently designed, purely natural process based on the environment, based on what's selected for, and based on the mutations that happen.
Okay, natural selection was a paper written by a Christian, Edward Blythe. He was a creationist.
Inverted commas, yeah.
Yeah, and natural selection is not some atheistic evil idea. It was made by.
I never said it was.
But you don't accept natural selection.
Of course I don't, because I'm a Christian, or I profess to believe in Christianity. No Christian should accept natural selection because it contradicts the scriptures. It contradicts Christian theology.
Okay, a Christian was the one who created the theory of natural selection, which Darwin piggybacked off of.
It doesn't matter who created it. That's a genetic fallacy. It doesn't matter how something, a belief, comes about. It's either true or false.
But you had implied that
you're a Christian and you deny the Bible. Why would he be any different?
Okay, I don't deny the Bible. Number one.
On my view, you do.
Well,
if you say that Adam is not the first man, and the Bible says Adam is the first man, you're denying the Bible.
Where does it say that in the Bible? Where does it say Adam was the first man?
Just look at Genesis, all the way through Genesis. Show me any other human beings that are mentioned there before Adam.
I did. Adam means the human, or it can mean the humans.
Oh my God! So when Jesus says that just as sin came through one man, so I remove sin?
No.
One man to one man in Romans?
Okay.
Did Jesus not say that?
Do you understand that the concept of original first sin coming from one man where we all carry the sin, that doesn't come from the Bible. That's a human interpretation that came from St. Augustine.
Absolutely not.
Oh, yes, it is.
Absolutely
You
not.
learn history, my friend.
Okay, how many, according to the book of Romans, how many men have not sinned?
I never, but I know you're assuming that I believe that up and until Adam sinned, everybody was perfect. I don't believe
But
that.
You haven't demonstrated there was anyone else.
Well, even scientifically, we know there was. I don't need the Bible for that. I could do that with my hands behind my back.
Okay, so show me there was a population of humans without any assumptions.
We have to make assumptions in science. That's how
okay.
Science.
So you're saying that the fact that there was many humans is an assumption?
No. We make assumptions when we're doing a scientific method.
What's one of those main assumptions? It's called methodological what?
Naturalism, right? And that's right. That's how science is done. Because if you don't,
what is methodological naturalism?
Assuming that nothing breaks the laws of physics. There is no super.
It's not that. That's not methodological naturalism.
Okay, what is it, Matt? Tell the room.
It's basically that the methodological naturalism is a method, a way of working that only admits natural things and natural explanations into science. It assumes,
I don't have a problem with that, because once you start invoking the supernatural in the science, it's not science.
But that's an assumption, yeah?
No, it's true. If you're familiar with the Kitzmiller-Dover trial.
Wow. Okay, tell me what philosophical naturalism is.
You're not going to run the room. This is my room. I'm in control. I'm the host. I'm going to broadcast here. I'm going to explain for a minute.
Oh, you're just going to preach to me now?
No. Okay. In the Kitzmiller-Dover trial, when Michael Behe was being asked questions by the judge about would voodoo or black magic be considered science once we take out methodological naturalism, he said yes. Black magic and voodoo would be considered a science if we do not invoke naturalism into our science.
And astrology, right?
Right, and astrology, right? You know what I'm talking about. And so it's a dangerous position to take when you invoke supernatural causation into a naturalistic process. That's why we have guidelines in our scientific method. And I'll broadcast you. I'll broadcast you now.
Thanks for the sermon. I appreciate that. First of all, you made the wrong assumption that I was criticizing methodological naturalism. So everything you just said there is irrelevant. It's right that science operates on methodological naturalism, and for the reason that by doing so, it eliminates a whole host of extraneous possibilities like demons and flying pygmies and things like that. So I wasn't criticizing methodological naturalism as used in science. What I was doing is pointing out that's what it operates on, and what it operates on is an assumption. Philosophical naturalism is the assertion that all that exists is the natural world with natural explanations. Science does not operate on philosophical naturalism, the assertion that only the natural exists, but the assumption that only the natural exists and only as a way of working. That's why you can have Christian scientists. When they're doing their science, they assume atheism. They assume only the natural when they're doing their science. However, you can see how that plays into theories. Let's take natural selection. Well, what if it was supernatural selection? What if God selected through evolution? What if God was supervening that process of selection to guarantee that human beings appeared on the earth? That would be supernatural selection. But why does science call it natural selection? Well, because of methodological naturalism. But that's just an assumption.
How would you test supernatural selection and prove God did it? How would you do that?
Why would you need to? Why would you need to test God? You know the Bible says, do not test the Lord your God.
Do not tempt the Lord your God. It does not say do not test.
Test.
Okay, Matt. So you pray for me, I'll think for you.
Yeah, here's a verse for you. Well, you can't think for me because you got things wrong. Here's the Bible verse I was talking about. So this is taken from the Bible, New Testament teaching, Romans 5:12. This is what it says. Not only so, but we also rejoice in God through our Lord Jesus Christ, through whom we have now received reconciliation. Therefore, just as sin entered the world through one man, and death through sin, so also death was passed on to all men, because all sinned. For sin was in the world before the law was given, but sin is not taken into account where there is no law. Do you see where sin came from? You see the results of sin according to the scriptures. Science can't tell you that kind of stuff.
I
The
never said
Bible
it could.
can. The Bible does.
I never said it could. I'm not into scientism. Science can't answer all of the questions in life,
Exactly.
but it can answer a lot of them.
And which should take precedence? If you've got the Bible saying X and science says not X, which takes precedence for the Christian?
The science.
X or not X? Not X.
No, the science. And
Okay,
I'll tell you why. I'll
sure.
tell you why. Because the Bible says you are to test it. Test all things, hold fast to
The
what
Bible
is good.
doesn't say that.
So First Colossians doesn't say put all things to the test.
It doesn't say that about the Bible.
It's
The
talking
Bible
about
didn't. The Bible didn't exist at that time.
What?
The Bible did not exist at the time that letter was written. Prove all things, hold fast to that which is good.
The Bible is a collection of a lot of different books in the Bible didn't exist when the Bible was complete. That's why it's called the Bible. The
Yeah.
Bible is plural, but
The Bible did not exist when that letter was written. The author did not have the intention to say, prove the Bible.
he had the intention of saying, prove that letter.
Okay, so if you have to prove all things, let's take it literally, the way you're doing. Prove all things. Can you prove why the scientific method is reliable without using the scientific method?
Can I?
Look to listen to you guys more, but unfortunately, I have to go to work 5 o'clock in the morning.
Enjoy.
So I'm gonna listen to you guys later.
All right, we'll talk to you later, Rich.
Enjoy.
Later, Rich.
But yeah, so how can you test the scientific method without using the scientific method?
Yeah. How do you do that?
You can't, because you would need to use it in order to test it.
Exactly. So it's unverifiable as a method.
Right. So you wouldn't use the Bible so you could test the Bible. You need something outside the Bible so you could test it.
Now, what would you use outside of the Bible to test the Bible? An unverifiable method like science?
Science is oh my gosh. So
You just said that science is unverifiable.
no, I said you can't test the scientific method using the scientific method.
Okay. So how would you verify the scientific method without using the scientific method? You can't.
You can use philosophy, and we use philosophy when we're doing science. So that's how you verify it.
Okay. But what you're saying is you cannot verify the scientific method using the scientific method.
Right, but there's other ways we can verify about using the scientific method.
So how would philosophy verify the scientific method? How would that work?
We have philosophical principles, which the scientific method is based off of, like methodological naturalism. That's why we accept it.
No. Methodological naturalism is not a philosophical principle.
It is
That's
a philosophical.
It's not. Philosophical naturalism is obviously philosophical. The assertion that all that exists is the natural. Science modifies that to methodological naturalism as a way of working. We assume philosophical naturalism is the case, but it's only as a way of working. There's no commitment there that the only things that exist is the natural world.
Okay.
So if we identify something in science that's purely based on that assumption, we don't have a commitment to accept that statement because it's not based on science, it's based on an assumption.
But it's a very good assumption that gets its results.
Well, if you've got a hypothesis A, natural selection, undirected, unguided, unintelligently designed, mindless process, and then you've got another hypothesis B, intelligently designed, guided, supervened, supernatural selection, and you're a Christian, and there's no science to separate the two of them, then you would go with, as a Christian, you would go with the one which is in line with your worldview. You wouldn't choose the one that's not in line with your worldview, that's just an assumption. You would go in that which you've already placed your faith in.
You go with whichever one is true, whichever one is right. Like,
how can an assumption be true?
Be tested because assumptions make predictions.
Assumptions cannot be true.
They make predictions.
Okay, what predictions does natural selection make that supernatural selection would not make?
I don't even know what supernatural selection is.
I explained it to you. The process of selection in a process of evolution, the selection process is not undirected, mindless, unintelligently designed. It's designed by God, supervened by God, ran by God, to make sure that human beings come about.
But that's the exact same thing as natural selection, though.
No, it's not. Natural selection is a purely natural process. That's why it's called natural. There's no design there. There's no intelligence behind it. There's no mind behind it. It's just something that happens.
Natural selection is a scientific mechanism for how evolution works.
And where does the natural... Which science provides evidence that it should be natural selection and not supernatural?
Because we have no way to test the supernatural.
So it's an assumption then?
It's better than your assumption, though. So it's a better explanatory.
What do you mean my assumption? I thought you said you were a Christian.
Okay, this has nothing to do with Christianity.
Supernatural selection is consistent with Christianity, yes?
No, this is something you just made up.
Oh, okay. So you don't believe that God, that let's say God wanted human beings to come about, necessarily so. So God's going to create the universe. He's going to bring about a world. And in that world, human beings are definitely 100% going to be there. Okay? What would account for that? Natural selection? No, it couldn't, because natural selection isn't guided outside of itself. It's not designed to bring about an end product. There's no intelligence behind it, and it's not directed by an intelligence. So, if the environment, like I said earlier, if the environment was slightly different, if something else had been selected for rather than what was selected for, if a different mutation had happened, no humans. That's biological evolution. But if God is supervening that process, if God is directly involved in it, or even indirectly involved in it, then yeah, you can see how that works. That would be supernatural selection. God making sure that through the process that He's doing, human beings came to appear. Because that was His objective in creation, yeah? You agree that was His objective in creating?
That was his objective in creation, but supernatural selection does not exist, and we have no reason to believe like there's something wrong with natural selection or the whole evolutionary process goes down the drain, because when we're doing natural science, we don't mention God.
Why is that? Because of methodological naturalism, an assumption.
Which is good because it gives us results.
Yeah, I mean, but where's this? I'm asking you to provide me the science for natural selection. Show me the scientific evidence that tells me, hey, Matt, it's natural, not supernatural.
Because we don't know what supernatural is. What is that? What's supernatural?
God supervening the process to guarantee the human beings at the end of the process.
Okay, how do you prove God is doing it scientifically?
No, it's a hypothesis.
Well, then it's not scientific theory. We shouldn't. I mean,
I never said it's a theory. I said it's a hypothesis.
okay. Well, what predictions does your hypothesis make? So it
The
can turn into a theory?
predictions would be that humans would appear on the earth, and it's a confirmed hypothesis because we're here. And as a Christian, or someone who says you're a Christian, don't you believe that God intended for humans to be on this planet?
He did intend for humans to be on this
So
planet.
how could God guarantee that happening?
He could guide the evolutionary process.
There we go. Intelligently designed process.
Right, but
So
this
now
is
but how would
this-
that be natural? How's that consistent with natural selection,
this
which is an unintelligently designed process?
this is a theological implication on the science. So the science doesn't say any of that, nor can it.
Exactly.
We're talking
So science can't validate natural selection. It can only assume it.
No. Science cannot
Okay.
validate supernatural selection. Supernatural selection would be.
I'm not asking you about supernatural. I'm asking you to give me the scientific evidence that the selection that happened was purely natural. Give me the scientific evidence in support of that claim.
First, we need to know what supernatural is.
No.
We don't. We
Wait a minute.
don't know what supernatural is.
Let's assume that supernatural selection is just nonsense I made up. Okay, it doesn't exist. Okay, and let's just completely keep ourselves within the field of study of science and biological evolution. Okay, no gods, no designers, nothing, just purely science and how it operates. Now, we've got this theory to explain the fact of evolution. That includes something called natural selection. And I am asking you to provide me the science that tells us, provides evidence for, observable, testable evidence that the selection that happened was purely natural.
It was purely natural because we have no reason to believe that a supernatural even exists. We don't know what supernatural is. How can you test something you don't know anything about?
Okay, wait a
We don't
minute.
have.
So, is your argument something like this? There's no evidence against it being natural selection, therefore it's natural selection.
The evidence lies in the direction that it is natural.
Yeah, no. Okay, what evidence?
The evidence that nature selects. Nature selects certain genes and certain patterns.
How do you know that's undirected?
How do you know it's? I'm not saying it's directed or undirected.
No, but biological evolution says it's undirected. It's mindless. It's undirected. It's not intelligent design. It's not supervened. None of that. Natural selection is a purely natural process. That's how it's defined in biological evolution. Purely natural. So, is your argument basically along the lines of there's no evidence? Okay, so 2 lines of argument you could have. There's no evidence that selection is supernatural, therefore it being supernatural is false. Or there's no evidence against it being natural, therefore it's natural. Is that your arguments?
Well, all right. We also know natural
Answer
selection.
my question. Is that your argument?
No, we also know natural selection is natural because
How do we know that?
well, who else is doing the selecting?
Well, I don't know. I'm agnostic on that. Why
Well,
must it be natural?
Well, if there is no like agent, right, intelligent agent guiding these things, right, like a person, a physical person, human being
Do
doing
you
the
believe
selecting.
there was?
I don't think it was an intelligent person, like an intelligent human being.
You don't believe God's intelligent?
I don't believe in intelligent design. I believe in divine design, which is supernatural.
Yeah, so you believe it's supernatural. You believe in a supernatural thing behind the selection process.
Yeah, but why
There we go.
can't God why can't God use natural processes and natural laws to bring about this?
How could God use a process? How could God use a process that is described as not bringing about human beings to bring about human beings?
Because it's not a process that I think
Evolution is not a process.
no, you're misunderstanding the process. You're misunderstanding
Okay.
that there are philosophical and theological implications for the facts. The facts is natural selection happens. Now, does it happen by an agent that's divine, or does it happen completely on its own, or etc.? That's up for debate.
I don't think you know what natural selection is.
Okay.
I think if you look at the science if you look at how science presents natural selection, in fact, if you read Origin of Species sometimes by Charles Darwin, if you read Richard Dawkins, a biological evolutionist, people like that, you would understand that natural selection is unguided by anything outside of itself, undirected, mindless, not intelligently designed. That's the process of biological evolution. That's how it's described in science. It doesn't allow for God to be involved in that process. It doesn't allow for intelligent design to bring about that process. And if that's the case, if that's how it describes it, if it's a process that's undirected, unguided, etc., how could God use such a process to direct the undirected? That would be a contradiction. So you're faced with a decision. If you cannot produce any science for it being natural selection, if it's just based on methodological naturalism, which is an assumption as a way of working, and not based on any scientific evidence, then you can reject natural selection. You can say, no, that's just an assumption. The word natural there, just an assumption of science. I'm going to go with what I believe, consistent with my Christian faith, supernatural selection. God supervened this process to guarantee that human beings came about, or he designed it, or he guided it.
Right, but I'm not saying he didn't. I'm saying that God worked through natural processes so he could bring about people. I mean, natural processes still go on. I mean, God forbid, like a baby
We are not
naturalistically
evolving.
a baby naturalistically forms for 9 months.
Yeah,
And I think
I've
God
seen
is
that process.
right, and it's a process that is completely natural. Now, God may be holding together these natural processes and et cetera along the way, but we cannot scientifically prove God did it. And that's what I'm
Okay,
saying.
here's a separate line of questioning for you. According to the New Testament, what's the fate of humanity? What's going to happen to human beings? Are we going to evolve into something different, another species?
According to the Bible, no. And according to the
Okay.
science, no. There's going to be
So are we not still evolving according to biological evolution?
evolution doesn't stop. It's change
Exactly.
still happens.
So we're still evolving, yeah?
Yeah, we've been evolving for thousands of years. I mean, we've gotten taller.
So if we keep on evolving, why couldn't we become another species?
Well, we would still be humans.
Yes, but
No,
another species would come from us.
Sure.
Any biblical support for that? Anything
Well,
in
we
the
have no.
Bible? Anything in the Bible that even indicate? Because if we are, I mean, do you agree that evolution doesn't go backwards? Like it doesn't, like if you've got primates like baboons or something like that,
Mhm.
that if it evolves with an advantage there. So you don't evolve downwards, you don't devolve, you evolve. So whatever you have just now, if it's evolving, if another species derives from it, it's going to have all the same attributes of what's there already, but with an advantage, something better or something different. Yeah?
Okay. Yeah. Like things are not devolving; they're evolving. They're right. Okay.
So if you've got human beings right now, and human beings are the subject of God's salvation, but if another species was derived from us, then they would be in some way more evolved than us.
Well, no.
They wouldn't be.
Okay.
They would evolve back to
Wait. Why wouldn't humans evolve? What's to stop humans from speciating into another species?
Another species.
Not other than humans, but a different species of
Right. A different
human.
species of human. Well, I
You
mean,
mean like,
they was.
you mean like something like through genetic drift or something?
I'm sorry, what?
Well, yeah, like genetic drift and etc.
Well, there are several mechanisms by which humans could evolve. Genetic drift, migration, or excuse me, genetic migration. What's the other genetic? I can't remember the other one. And natural selection, but we've eliminated natural selection because of technology and better living. So, but we still have beneficial, but we still mutate. We still have beneficial. I'm losing my train of thought. I'm sorry, but we're still evolve. We're still evolving. I'm sorry.
Right. I know what you mean. We're still changing. Change still happens, and even if right, people were to speciate out, and a new species of humans would be like created or born or whatever, it wouldn't take away from Christianity, because those humans would be able to be saved too. Like even if there were like some type of like
Jesus died for them?
Jesus died so he could reconcile the whole of creation, everything.
Okay, so animals are going to heaven?
They could be.
You got any biblical support for that?
Did not Jesus die for the whole creation?
No,
I mean,
definitely not.
he reconciled everything because we're all because we are all related.
So like plants and fruit, like oranges are going to be in heaven because Jesus died for oranges and apples and pears and bananas.
Okay.
And we evolved from them, yeah?
Yeah. Okay. So Matt,
Cladistically speaking, we're still fish, yeah?
do you not accept evolution or like?
No, I asked you a question.
Matt, did you say cladistically?
Cladistically speaking, are we still fish?
Yes.
So if Jesus died for everything, and cladistically speaking, we are still fish, did Jesus die for fish?
Sure. Jesus died to reconcile the whole creation.
So there's going to be fish in heaven?
You're taking my statement and you're just like.
Yeah, I'm taking the piss out of it. It's so stupid.
Well, no, you're just like knocking over the chess pieces and crapping on the board and saying you're one.
No, definitely not. I'm not saying I won. I'm saying I'm demonstrating the stupidity of your understanding of.
No, you're taking it hyper literal, like some people do with Genesis.
You don't believe, but it's you that said that Jesus died to reconcile everything.
Okay, if you would let me explain, I would explain.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so when Jesus died, he reconciled the whole of creation so that all of creation could be saved from decay spiritually in a spiritual sense. And so now there can be a new creation where there can be a new heaven and a new earth and everything else. The details about all of that, I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm fine with saying I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't know everything about this new creation, and I'm fine with that.
So you'll say that the whole of creation is in a spiritual relationship with God?
No. The whole of creation doesn't have a soul. What I'm saying is the whole of creation was physically decaying, and in a spiritual sense, Jesus reconciled in a spiritual sense.
In a spiritual, but who was Jesus? Who did Jesus die for?
Jesus died for the.
Well, let me give you that verse again, okay? Maybe reading the Bible sometime rather than reading science books would do you some good here. Therefore, just as sin entered the world through one man, and death through sin, so also death was passed on to all men, mankind. You see that? No fruits there, no animals there, no rocks there. Spiritual death passed on to all men. You get that, yeah?
Yeah, hold on, give me a minute. I'm looking something up.
Oh, okay, cool.
Because Because I got a Bible verse for you too.
This is like teaching Sunday school class. It's like Theology 101.
Okay.
Christian theology does not believe or teach. Christian theology does not, nor historically has taught, nor teaches today that Christ died to redeem anything else but human beings. That's basic Christian theology. Not apples and oranges and fish and animals.
That is St. Augustine theology, and you need to look that up.
Yeah, there it is. I gave you the verse. So also death was passed, and in your view, this is spiritual death, right? Not physical death.
It was spiritual. It was spiritual.
So also spiritual death was passed on to all men. And you believe men there is mankind. So spiritual death was passed on to all mankind. It's mankind who spiritually died. If Christ reversed that process, it's mankind that's spiritually reconciled with God. That's the ones who have the spiritual disconnection.
Okay, so here's the verse I want to share with you. This is Romans 8:19, and it says, "For the creation waits in eager expectation for the children of God to be revealed. For the creation was subjected to decay, not by its own choice, but by the will of the one who subjected it." And who was that? That was God. And hope,
decay.
Physical decay, and hope.
Not spiritual.
Physical decay. The universe is physically decaying. That the creation itself will be liberated from its bondage to decay and brought into the freedom and glory of the children of God.
Yes.
And so when we are brought into glory, also the creation of the universe will be brought into glory as well. Physical glory. Right. And so Jesus.
So we're going to be spiritually restored, and the earth is. But wait a minute. Don't you believe that death was already there when the earth was created?
Sure, yeah, death was already here. Okay.
So that means the earth was already physically decaying. There was already death.
Right, from the one who subjected it, which was God.
So God subjected the earth to physical death. He caused it to be dead, but he's going to fix that. So God made a mistake.
No. If God would have made everything perfect, it would have been a mistake, because God cannot make a finite, infinite thing. That's a contradiction. How can you make a perfect imperfection?
Well, our souls are infinite.
So no, a soul just means emotion.
Okay, so you don't believe in it. So you also believe, along with your other unorthodox beliefs about Christian theology, you don't believe that we are embodied souls.
We are. No, you're getting spirit and soul confused. Soul is in Hebrew. Soul is nefesh.
Yes.
And nefesh just means soul, like it's equivalent to emotions. So animals have souls. They have emotions they can feel.
So why did Jesus say then? Do not fear him who can kill the body, but fear him who can kill the body and soul in hell.
I will look that verse up to see if it actually says soul.
Well, it does.
That's what I'll do though. I'll do that.
Always good to double check.
Hey guys, I'm gonna call it a night.
Gotcha.
I'll be back into another hangout with you sometime, Wayne.
All right.
Later.
You guys take it easy.
Yeah, it's Matthew 10:28.
28.
Do not be
29.
afraid of those who kill the body but cannot kill the soul. Instead, fear the one who can destroy both soul and body in hell.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
There are things that are they're equivocated a lot. but they don't mean the same thing, Matt.
Okay. So
They
what's soul equivocating for?
A soul is not a spirit, and a spirit is not a soul.
So, but if soul is just emotions, then that's going to die when we die. But the spirit's not going to die. Why would God say, don't fear those who can kill the body, but those who kill the soul, if soul is just your emotions, which die with the body anyway?
Say that one more time.
Why would God say, do not fear those who can kill the body, but not the soul, but fear him who can kill both body and soul in hell? Because if soul is just the emotions, that dies with the body anyway. Emotions are just part of the biology of people.
No. The soul will probably live on because humans have the spirit.
No,
So
it's the spirit that lives on.
it's the spirit that lives on, but the spirit can still like have like those soulish features, like
So the
emotions,
spirit's going to have a soul, emotions.
or maybe the soul could have a spirit or something like that. Who knows?
Or maybe they're synonymous terms.
You're equivocating in terms that don't mean the same thing, but also like you're also because what you're doing, you're making it seem like all this stuff is set in stone. We have to do our best. So
This is all basic Christian theology.
no, it is not basic Christian theology
Absolutely
because
so. This is orthodoxy.
no, the church has been arguing over stuff like this for years. For
The
years.
church has been the church doesn't argue over whether the church today, the church historically has not been arguing over whether or not the subject of Christ's salvation is human beings or human beings and animals and fish and plants and fruit.
The church now, they have been arguing. I know the Catholic Church has been arguing with some
I'm
other
not talking about I'm not talking about the Catholic Church. I'm talking about the universal church. 48,000 denominations under the umbrella term Christianity. The vast majority of those, probably about 40,000 of them, orthodoxy would say the object of God's salvation through Christ is human beings. Not apes, not bonobos, not fish, not plants, human beings. That's the object of God's salvation. It's them, it's human beings who were in a spiritual relationship with God. That relationship was broken by what you would call, maybe, I don't know what you would call it, I call it Adam and Eve. That relationship was broken, and Christ came to restore that relationship, that broken relationship between human beings and God. Never, not fish. In fact, God gave to human beings all the animals to eat as food. He said, go kill them. Go kill that which is the object of salvation. It seems kind of strange.
No. Well, also too, humans are the object of God's salvation, but God has told people to kill other humans too. So that's a tongue in cheek for what you just said.
Absolutely. No, absolutely not. Because the general situation is first of all, murder is forbidden. So if, let's say for example, if I was out in the woods and I had a gun and I seen a nice deer, I could shoot the deer, and I'm not going to be convicted of murder. Okay. However, if there's a human being there, and I do the same with a human being for the same reason, for food, I'm going to get put in jail for murder, and I'm going to be convicted by God of that. So yeah, there are certain situations where God says, go kill this person, but God never says go murder that person.
Well, I think the difference is that, God did say that man had dominion over animals, so he could eat,
Yes. Yes.
but God also commanded humans to kill other humans, but I mean, it wasn't cannibalism. So,
No.
Huh?
No, it wasn't cannibalism, yeah.
No, it wasn't. No.
Well, you know what I'm getting at?
Right.
Like
I'm
for
not.
example, let's take the first sacrifice in the Bible, okay? The first mention of sacrifices. Cain and Abel brought sacrifices before God. Yep.
Right.
Abel's sacrifice was an animal sacrifice. That means he killed an animal. Cain's was a food offering. He never killed an animal. God looked upon favour Abel's sacrifice, the one where he killed an animal. He never looked on favour on Cain's offering. In fact, he said, no, he rejected it. And then Cain got so mad that he killed his brother, murdered him, the first murder. So you can see that all working out in the very first account there about, from God's perspective, he accepted an animal sacrifice, an animal offering, which means killing it, but he refused the fruit. So it kind of tells you that animals are kind of there for human beings. They're not there as the object of salvation. They're not there as creatures in a spiritual relationship with God.
No.
We are the only creatures described in such a way as having that relationship. And that we broke that relationship, and Christ came to restore that relationship.
Right. But what I think we're talking past each other. What I'm saying is, when Christ died, he reconciled the universe back to himself, because when man sinned, he gave his dominion over to Satan. Okay? And when Christ died on the cross, he reconciled the creation back to himself so he could restore it, because man had dominion over the earth first, and Satan came, and man gave that position over to Satan.
No. The universe is, God created the universe. There was nothing to reconcile. The universe is the universe was the universe and the earth, according to your view anyway, was created physically decaying. It's still physically decaying.
It's still physically decaying. But I'm not talking about the science. This is spiritual. On a spiritual level, when Satan came into the garden, Adam gave his dominion over to Satan because he obeyed him.
Yes.
Okay. And Jesus Christ came and he reconciled the creation back unto himself.
No, he reconciled humanity back to himself. And as a result of that, he will make a new creation where he will bring back, he will restore the earth, the heavens and the earth, a new heavens and a new earth. But that's just an idiom for heaven. It's not going to be a physical place you live. It's not going to be like where we are now, like a new earth. It's just an idiom for heaven, which is where Christians are going to be.
Oh, I'll agree to disagree with you, man, but it's been good talking to you. I'll talk to you later, buddy.